I have a number of videos and pictures of different products and their packaging, some good and some bad. What I'd like to look at here is a set of pots that my wife and I got for our anniversary or for our wedding, and some difficulty we had each trying to get into the box. And we both had the exact same difficulties, which suggests we're both equally as silly and dumb, or the product themselves are actually rather difficult to get into. So in this case, when you go to open the box, it's fairly heavy because it's got a big cast iron pot in, and I went and it was much harder to open this flap the first time when it hasn't been opened before, but eventually I got it open, and as you can see, we actually tore the box to get it open, and then you open your products inside. And here's the example of the box that my wife opened, and as you can see, she too went and tore open the lid and broke the box trying to get in. Here's the box that I tried to get into. Exact same. Here you can see me ripping the box, and it was quite tight when you're opening it for the first time. You might be expecting that it's tight because it's a well-made box and it's a good company, but it wasn't until we had broken a few boxes that we actually realized that on the other side of the box there's a flap, and it looks identical to the flap on the other side, then there's a small orange tag at the bottom, and if you use that flap, the box opens completely effortlessly to get in. And so I think the design flaw with this particular product is that it's not obvious which side of the box you open to get in. Now, one could argue that it's actually extremely obvious because the box has a front, there's an image on the top, and there's a front side, therefore, and there's a back side to the box. And the sides are different in that the back side is flat all the way across, whereas the front side has a small divot at the bottom, which clearly shows that that's how you get into the box. But one thing which should be considered is that the way that these boxes are opened is that the opener, or at least in our case it was, is at the top looking down upon the box. And this is because these things weigh an absolute ton, and so you're either opening it on the floor or you're opening it on the table. One wouldn't go as far as to actually ever crouch down to get to eye level to the thing. And when you're projecting looking downward, this side of the box looks pretty much the same as this side of the box at first glance. And it just happened to be put on the table in this manner, and I'm right-handed, and so I think that's why I naturally went to try to wedge open the right side of the box. So that's, I think, the general problem we're trying to solve is how do we make the box easy to get into? A few potential solutions. One might be to make it more obvious the difference between the front side and the back side. This might be accomplished by perhaps making the back side the same color as the side of the box. Then this very severe contrasting orange would wrap its way around the backside, and it might make it more visually obvious that this is clearly where the front of the box is. A second thing might be to simply write the word open on the front of the box. So if one is just quickly visually looking at the box, it's more obvious that the word open is written above this divot here. Second option might be to put a small arrow, perhaps, pointing from the top down with the word open, but obviously that would, I think, make it not look as clean as it is, and so I have a lot of hesitancy about the idea of putting the word open that obvious on it. Perhaps a small arrow in the corner pointing down, perhaps putting the word open right actually on the side which you open, and perhaps making the back side a contrasting color. Now, it might, for design reasons and the way that these stack in stores, perhaps the company doesn't want to use a contrasting color on the back side. They would prefer them to be white in the way that they're stacked in that manner. And in that way, perhaps making the design and the way that this panel is laid out look slightly different than this panel, to make it more obvious that one side is the back and one side is the front. And so here we have, an example where several boxes were all destroyed because we couldn't figure out how to get into them. And I'd be curious, or it'd be interesting to know if this is actually a reasonably common problem encountered by people trying to open these boxes, because it, in general, shouldn't be that hard to get into a box. And I would entirely agree that it makes sense that one would turn an object towards them and they would open the front flap up when trying to get into a box. But somehow neither me nor my wife did that when we opened the boxes. And so it's an interesting problem. Anyway, this is the first of perhaps more discussions on product packaging. That was looked at since filming would be potentially to put a ribbon that could come out of the front of the box, and this might direct the user to which side of the box is clearly the front, and it could probably be done in an elegant way with an orange ribbon that matched the brand's aesthetic. Potentially another option is to avoid the problem altogether. If a large number of people actually are trying to get into the box from either side, perhaps the box should just be built so that it's easier to open the flaps from either side. I don't know if this could be done in a way which would ensure that the box's stability wasn't compromised, but this is probably in some ways the best solution, as it doesn't add new visual clutter to the box, it doesn't try to change the way that people behave, and it adapts the actual product to perhaps what people's normal behavioral patterns are.